Welcome to Bokeh, a podcast exploring the ever-blurring lines between the personal and business lives of professional photographers. This is your host, Nathan Holritz, and I'm so excited to have you join me in connecting with photographers and entrepreneurs in the photography industry as we discuss photography, building a business, and still having a life through it all. This podcast is brought to you by Photographers Edit, custom post-production for the wedding and portrait photographer. And now, let's dive into conversation. All right, so what better way to have a conversation with a friend in the industry than over sushi? I think that's a great platform for conversation, right?
Yeah, and it's fusion sushi.
This is true. We are at a little place here, and what is this officially? What city is this?
This is Columbus. We're at Easton Town Center.
So we're in Columbus, Ohio. I'm sitting here with my friend Chad DiBlasio. I am pronouncing that correctly, right? I should know this by now, I assume. But we've had a lot of great conversation today already, and I figure it makes sense that we just kind of bring people along for the ride. Yeah. Let them in on a little bit of the conversation. I want people photographers to know who you are in the industry, what you're doing, where you're based. So tell us a little bit about that first.
So we're a wedding and portrait studio out of Columbus, Granville, Ohio. We primarily wedding based. We do 15-ish weddings a year. Second shoot, 5 or 10 just for fun to kind of expand out. But we also do all the other work that we do is all word of mouth stuff. So we do a little bit of corporate photography. We do some promotional photography. Do some seniors and families and stuff. So, but we've been shooting. I've been full-time, no other jobs for, this is coming up on 7 years, shooting since I was probably 12 or 13, so I guess officially launched my business in 2005, so coming up on 10, almost 11 years, wow.
So you said 12 or 13, was it how did you even get into it in the first place?
Yeah, so we have a program here called 4-H, which is farms and kind of kids, I don't know, they have 4-H in other places, have you ever heard of that?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's kind of a youth thing that they do to get kids involved with projects, and they take them to the fair and present and all that stuff. So 4-H was a way for me to take like projects of, I did model rocketry and I did photography and I did sewing and things that just, you do these projects and there's books you work through as kind of a, experience life kind of thing. So my stepdad had an old Canon film camera, and my sister did it the year before, and I was really jealous, and I remember being super intrigued that they took a picture of the stoplight and you could see all 3 of the lights in the stoplight because they did like in a time lapse. So just my brain is very sciencey and artsy mixed, so that was very intriguing to me as something that was artistic but also had a very kind of technical science side to it. So we started shooting that next year, and I just kind of kept with it. I had a disposable camera, and then I bought, when I first moved to college, one of my very first purchases was a 35 millimeter Canon like point and click camera.
That was also film.
Oh yeah, it's film. 35 millimeter. I have ungodly amounts of film that I've developed all through college that, I think part of me got into it because girls liked it. So, to be totally honest. Yeah. It was one of those things that was like, it was same with art and music, is like, it was what my heart loved, but it was also, it helped that it was kind of popular and cool, because I wasn't either one of those things.
Well, popular and cool, but yet probably a larger or smaller percentage of people actually did it, right? I mean, how many people are actually good at music or photography as a hobby of theirs?
Right. Yeah, so early on in college, like, nobody took pictures on film, especially. Right. That was like, I remember very early on in college, like, cameras on phones were becoming like a thing. I had it wasn't a BlackBerry, it was a Palm Trio. It was like the first like planner organizer smartphone that had a cool camera on it. And by cool, I mean like 1.2 megapixel.
Right.
So yeah, that was like my first delve into it. And as I was developing film, and as I got to go to Africa, I took some film there, probably 30 rolls over the summer. Came back and developed that, and was just like, I don't know, it's just, I remember sitting and looking at my parents' photos when I would come back from college, and because I was in this time in my life that like I didn't really fit anywhere, and that gave me kind of a basis of who I was and where I was and where I fit like in the world, in the story of the world. It was like, this is who I am. And so that always was very grounding for me, and very like kind of cathartic for me to come home and look through those photos of my second birthday, and even things like that, that like things from that point on in my life were not the same as they were then. My parents ended up getting divorced. My dad has now passed away. Like, those things have always kind of spoke to me personally and emotionally. Like, these are tying into not only my story in this world, but like kind of the things that are important to me. And
that's when a lot of artist types, photographers will talk about the idea of this being a reflection of who they are.
Mm-hmm.
And yet it almost seems like just a cliche phrase that they say they kind of borrowed from somebody else, but you're actually talking about photography as being something that was actually a reflection of you, or it was actually a platform to figure out who you were.
Yeah, more so of kind of, I don't know, and this may be something all kids that go through divorce or maybe artists are more inclined to think about life in this way, but like, I was always just kind of like wondering what my place was, like, where do I fit and what am I supposed to do and why do I matter, and so those things, I remember from a very early age, like, those things tied very tightly into my brain as to who I am. Is I'm the child of these people, and I'm the grandson of these people, and these are who these people are, and these are the kind of people that they interact with, and the community knows them as this kind of person, and like, my grandparents on both sides were known by all their friends and family as like very generous and sweet, compassionate people, but also very passionate. You know what I mean? Like, they my grandpa on my dad's side, my grandpa and my great grandfather were both very heavily involved in minor league baseball. So my great grandfather actually built the 16 to 18-year-old World Series park in Newark, Ohio, and made Newark, Ohio like well known in the baseball world for hosting and bringing out that kind of talent. And so it's like people around that area knew my family, and like that was that was very important to me as to like who I am, is I'm a part of these people, which gave me kind of a place in the world. So yeah, it's always been that way, and I feel like I have those photos of my grandparents in my office for that reason. And I tell people, wedding clients, it's like, it's not just about this cool wedding day, is like this gives you a place in the world, and it gives you a story as to who you are in existence, in history, in life. And so that's, it's very tied into that for me.
So when we're talking about identity, being able to actually establish this is the kind of the value that I bring to the people around me. Mm-hmm. You were able to do that by essentially capturing your family.
Yeah. Well, and it started, like I said, in college. So it was like I was able to do that with. I moved far away from school. I went to school in Missouri, and I was from Ohio, and that was like the first time, I think, it gave me a basis to establish kind of who I want to be, and because I was away from my family for the first time, and I didn't really have people there, didn't know me. I wasn't from any special family there, so it's like I was able to kind of, with art and with that, to help them and kind of figure out who they were. And that's the other aspect for me, is that not only does it give me a place in the world, but like I think my gifting as an artist is to be able to help people see clearly. So I don't know necessarily that I create anything that's not there, but for someone to look at themselves and to see themselves as they actually are, I think is very difficult. For other people to see that, I think is much easier. And so I feel like it helps them kind of give them a sense of identity, or a sense of, well, maybe I am beautiful, or maybe I am talented, or maybe I am, capable of looking in a way that is attractive. Like, that kind of stuff is like...
Well, I was going to say, because some people, when they, quote, actually see themselves for who they are, they don't see anything great. So how do you, as you help them see them for themselves, how do you simultaneously help them feel beautiful? What does that look like?
Well, I guess that's the thing, is like, maybe other people are better at seeing beauty or seeing things about them that they don't see, or maybe I don't know. So this is the quandary for me, is that I feel like people do know it. Like, I don't think most people look in the mirror and think they're hideous or horrible people. It's like, but what they think is that most people don't see them how they see themselves, or they don't see pictures that look like what they see. You know what I mean? Like, for me, an example, I look in the mirror and like I can see things about, I like my eyes, or I like how my beard shape is, or I like the way that my face fits my body. Well, then I see a bad picture of me, and it's like, it doesn't look like that. It looks like something like I hope that I never look like. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So you're helping them see.
I feel like that's my goal, is to give them an accurate reflection of who they are and what they look like in a way that I can see them. So I feel like it takes my skills as a photographer, but it also takes that whole blend of, I appreciate who they are and who they are to their friends, and so that's important, and I kind of try to scope that out and see how their friends see them and how they relate to them, and if they're fun and laughing, and or how their future spouses, if they're touchy, if they those are kind of all things I'm like inherently at this point just kind of like observing. So I'm like, part of being a good photographer is being a really good observer, a watcher of what's important to them, even if they don't tell you what's important to them. And then also knowing that like I feel like they inherently know that they have value, or they could have value, or they hope they have value, but when they see it reflected back in those photos, and it's like it confirms that, you know what I mean? It like gives, I always say it in this way, it's like it gives them permission to be pretty, or it gives them permission to feel good about how they look. Not necessarily that they're self-defeating to begin with, but they don't give themselves permission to accept that.
Wow. Okay, so this is...
that got really weird and deep from like, so how did you do photography?
So let's actually take a step back for a second, because what you were just explaining is pretty deep, and it is actually quite powerful. And if you, as a business, as a brand, have the ability to help your clients feel that way, I mean, they're not just going to come to you for great photography. In fact, I was just having a conversation with Nathan and Ashley Seiner, and they were talking about something similar. Great photography is, at this stage, is a commodity. It's to be expected, right?
Right. You're a professional. You should take great pictures.
So then to take the business, because it is the business in the end, to take the business beyond just decent photography and actually help your clients feel this way is a really, really powerful thing. How would you then, as a brand, focus primarily on wedding and engagement sessions with the occasional different types of portrait sessions kind of mixed in? How would you actually, like if you were to give me your some people say a 30-second or 60-second elevator pitch, what your brand stands for, I'd like to think that a 5 or 10-second summary is much better. How would you sum up your brand? How do you position yourself against the local market?
Yeah, so one of the things that we've always used as kind of like a tagline for my business is your life exactly how you pictured it. Is like this idea that that kind of encapsulates that is like,
so that is the tagline that you use, and that's actually pretty powerful, because it sums up what we just spent maybe 5 minutes talking about in a really short phrase. That's awesome.
Yeah, your life exactly how you pictured it, in the sense that like exactly how you hoped your family pictures would be, or how you hoped those family interactions would be, but also like I think how you idealize those things. It's like I wish that I looked as happy as I feel about my kids in pictures. Well, there's a way to, I feel like, encourage that culture to happen. And some of it happens just kind of like very, I want to say, grassroots, in the way that we establish our relationship with them. And obviously some clients are easier than others, but like I feel like those are the things that when you're able to vocalize and voice those things in the photos you take, in the way that they speak to people, but also in the text that you put around those things. I've had clients in the recent, in the recent past, since I've redone my website, that said, like, we've never met you, but we read what you put on your website, and it just really resonated with the things that we want from our wedding photography. And like, to me, like that's why they're my clients. Is not because they didn't, and I've always felt that way. It's like, it's kind of like one of those things I battle myself on is I don't feel like one of those photographers that people, and especially maybe other photographers, are going to look at my work and be like, holy crap, this guy, but clients do, and it's not necessarily because of the photos. The photos, like you said, it's a commodity. It's like, you should be good. There are enough free resources to teach you how to take great photos that, like, if you're technically not super solid, there's no reason for it, and especially if they're paying you pro level prices. But there's a whole, I would say probably 70%, the rest of the business, that's like how they feel about you, how they interact with you, how are their pictures and their products presented to them, like how are their emails worded, do they feel, is there a general overall cohesive brand? It's like, and I always think about, like, when you go to Apple or you go to a Burberry and like you walk in, like, what to expect before the person ever says a word to you, because what those brands are about. It's like, I want to have that kind of feel and vibe to the things that, and professionalism, a level of clean and polish to my brand, for my clients too, even though we're a boutique industry.
How do you how do you then get, or I guess, how do you effectively communicate that brand to the local market? And are you shooting or photographing local clientele, or are you doing some destination work as well? What's your focus there?
Yeah,
as far as the market goes.
80% of what we do is from around here.
Okay, so how do you effectively then communicate this brand message to the local market and separate yourself from the other photographers in the area?
So when I first started, I was a little older. I was in my late 20s when I decided that this is what I was going to do, and it had been through another business venture that was a direct sales kind of a thing. And it's like I spent a year and a half selling things that other people told me all the time nobody's going to buy. And I sold them all the time. $2,500 cleaning systems, sold them all the time, and I didn't feel like they were schemy. Like, I was selling things I totally believed in. We have them in our own house. We use them. It's like, but I sold things that people told me all the time is too expensive. There's no market for it. You're never going to make any money doing that stuff. And it's like, well, I am. And I'm not bending over backwards to make ends meet. Like, I'm doing well. And so that communicated in this business very well for me to be like, well, it's not necessarily about having a product that no one else has, because photography is something everyone has access to at this point. It's not about having something that you do better than anybody else, because, I mean, they probably know several good photographers. It's about that, for me, it's that whole package. And so the way that I felt like the way that I was going to present my brand was not through paid advertising necessarily. It was never going to really speak in the same way, at least not at the level I can afford to spend right now. Like, it's never going to speak in the same way for them to see a Facebook ad as it is for their friend to say, dude, have you met Chad DiBlasio? Like, he did our family pictures, and like, our kids love him. Like, that will never speak in the same. So I just decided the money that I had, or the money that I was going to put, that 7 or 8% of my business revenue, was going to go back into helping clients tell my story for me. So, we do things with personalized gifting for weddings. It's like, I don't have a wedding booking gift. I have a wedding booking gift portion of whatever they spend. It's like, and then I send them something that matters to them. Like, if they're into cooking, or if they're into being together and they're newlyweds and I know they're establishing a house, I send them a book, a cookbook, and I say, here's some really great, easy recipes. I know you're busy. Your lives are probably busy. But one of the things that our family really enjoys is doing dinner together. And I know that's something that can very easily and quickly erode from your time schedule, is doing dinner together, because we're busy. I said, so I hope this is something you guys can practice, and here's a way that you can do it. And it's like, then to me, it's something I care about. Those people, I care about their marriage, I care about their relationship, like little things like that. Like, I sent some clients, they're really into like art and music and photography. So I sent them this cool little like chain link clip that you clip like 4x6s in. And I was like, as much as I've taken pictures of my kids, the little books that I print for them each year from my cell phone photos have become one of my like most treasured things. I said, so here's something that we love. We love prints. We love having memories that we've made hanging around our house and sitting out where we can look at them. So what I would love for you guys to do is to take this, and as you start your relationship, hang this on your wall somewhere you'll see it, where you hang your keys or whatever, and just every couple months print something and hang it up there. It's like, this is something that we love. These are things that I know you guys love, and you have voiced, that you appreciate about the way that we do business. So here's a way for you guys to kind of engage in that. So those are things that, like, we do those with our wedding clients, and they're personal, and they're not, and that then gives them a reason to talk about us in a way that is real, and also not just like, oh, he spoiled us. It's like this is personal. This isn't, so that our brand is personal. My message is personal. Our intent is to be a boutique industry client, that we do 15 to 20 weddings, not 45 or 50, just because that's how I want to do business. That's how I feel like I function best in that realm. I can keep up with people. Like this morning, the clients that we met with, like, I know them. I know their kids. I know where they work and what they've been up to. And it allows me to do business in a different way, and it helps me tap into that market without having to go out and say, you guys should use me, to try to convince them.
That's beautiful, and it all centers around the idea of helping them feel a particular way, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
There's a lot of emotion behind it, and as I've been fascinated to learn over the last few years, emotion, if an action is driven by emotion, that action or the move in a particular direction tends to be a little bit stronger. If they're driven by emotion, something that you've helped them feel by the way that you've created this experience for them, or help them feel in creating this particular experience, they're more likely then to go talk about it.
Yeah,
because they've had something that has charged them emotionally.
Right. I was lucky to hear this guy named Daniel Pink give a speech, and then I bought his book called Drive, and it's about motivators. Why do we do what we do? He talks about the intrinsic motivators, the extrinsic motivators, the award-based motivations. So it's like he said very simply, you pay your child to do the garbage, to take the trash out. That then becomes the expectation that the action is rewarded by payment. They are very, very, very highly unlikely to ever take the trash out because they love you, or because they want to contribute to your family, or because they feel good about doing work, because you've already placed a value and a reward with this thing. He said, so what they found through doing all these motivational, experiments with jobs and workplace environments where people are, hey, we'll give you a bonus if you do this, or if you bring in this many new clients, then you get to win a trip. He's like, they all work to a degree, but most of the ones that are external motivators, like trips or money or increases in pay or time off, are all very short cycle. They don't have a long-term lasting effect, and they only last as long as the reward will be there. So I started thinking about that, and it seems like a lot of the things I do in my business relate back to how I think about my kids and like what we do. But like I started thinking about that with my kids is like, okay, so if I really want my kids to understand like that their part in our family is to, and their blessing of being part of a family is that they get to contribute and they get to be part of this group function that is for a greater good, a greater cause, that we can all live together and be in harmony and experience life in love. Like if that's our end goal, then we can't start that with either a fear-based of like, we're going to, if you don't do this, we're going to punish you. Yeah. But we also can't start it with a like, well, help with the dishes and you'll earn an allowance. Because in the long term, I want them to want to do the dishes and I want them to want to help out. Now, does that mean that they can't ever earn an allowance for doing dishes? No, but the established routine, the reward system should be based on something different. So with clients, I wanted clients to review us. Well, there was a part of me that was like, oh, I'll offer them a free canvas, send out a reviews. And that's cool, and I think it works. But I didn't want them to and maybe this is just a pride thing. Maybe this is just like, how can I get people to do this thing? But it really came down to like, I didn't want them to review me because I paid them. I didn't want them to give me even a good review or a bad review. I didn't want them to go to the site because in their heart they were like, oh yeah, we got to do this because we'll get 100 likes. I wanted them to review me because I wanted them to understand, and this is kind of has played into how I word the emails or how I talk on the phone to them. It's like, I want you guys to review me because I want other people who've never met me to kind of have an understanding of who they're getting involved with before they meet me. That's really it. So the reviews, like, I get teary, like, reading these things about what these people say about us. And I'm like, it's just really cool because that, to me, is a completely different business. And other people notice that right off. It's not they read the review and they're like, oh, this is really honest. It's like one of the reviews, Chris and Pio got married, and they did a Indian Chinese American fusion ceremony, and so like there was a couple different outfit changes and blah blah blah. Well, they left the ceremony site, and I'm pulling out of the ceremony site, and they're sitting there in their car, like looking at me like lost puppies. And I was like, you guys okay? And they're like, we ran out of gas, and all of our payment forms are in our other sets of clothes that our parents have with our cell phones 40 minutes down the road. So like I was like, okay, guys, just follow me. So I followed them to they followed me to the gas station. I put gas in their car and gave them, like, went to the ATM and got them some money because they were like, they hadn't eaten. Like, they were blown away by that. They were like, you're not like our family. Like, you're not. I was like, but to me, I would want that to happen for people, not just for my clients, but especially for my clients, because like they're my responsibility. But those kind of reviews, like, you're likely not going to read that a lot.
But that's all again driven.
Sites.
Yeah, well, exactly. So the motivation that you were talking about is intrinsic to the experience that you create for them that helps them feel, just to put it very, very simply, to feel good.
Yeah.
And valued, actually, that's a lot
right.
better word. That's really, really powerful. Thanks so much for listening to the Bokeh Podcast. If you'd like to hear a particular photographer or entrepreneur in a future episode, don't hesitate to email me, nathan@photographersedit.com. The Bokeh Podcast is brought to you by Photographers Edit, custom post-production for the wedding and portrait photographer.